Hey guys, what is going on? Thank you for entering the chamber once again. Today we're going to be talking about the, I guess you can call it the Bandlist 2.0 from Bandai. We're going to go a little bit quicker than we usually do and just kind of push through this. I want to give my thoughts on the ban list along with what I think the meta might kind of look like going forward. Especially in context of the meta with two major ban lists, this is honestly just kind of speculatory. But we'll deal with that in time. So let's talk about the bans first. Starting us off, Belmod. Belmod needed to go. This is easily probably the best hit on this ban list. Open concession. I think they hit a little bit too much, but we'll talk about that as we go. But I mean, Belmod's been argued to death. It allowed you to circumvent unique decks. It creates these like really weird like FTK turn kills basically, where you could die on like one energy sometimes, especially if you went second. And it's easy to just say that person was bad, but like if you don't find like a floodgate or something, this deck could easily make 12 or 13 attacks. Like you're going to die, or at least be left on like life support where you can't do anything. Mecha. The Mecha ban / Unite unban is the other really good change that they did. Bergamo to 1 is fine. Bergamo is a very strong effect, and still lets Unite players play with it along with other yellow decks. It is a very powerful effect, being able to tap 2 of your opponent's energy that way. But Unite becoming unbad means that puppies can like play again. They weren't a super competitive deck, but at least they can exist, and they definitely have the right to exist. Bardock the Resolute from 1 to 0 is probably good too, because in most situations, the card was just a 0 mana 15k double strike dual attacker that like had no downside, and if your opponent found it, it just felt really bad. Like, I mean, any limited card will feel that way, but Bardock was too influential. Into some weirder hits that I don't agree with. Tau. Tau's a really good card as a good way to like extend plays and push for pressure, and he is in kind of like Red's design like theory of like play cards for cheap and get ahead in the early game and try to figure it out later. I don't know if I would have banned Tau. Like if you really wanted to hit Tau, the most I would do is put him to 1, because he's good when he hits, but he's not as explosive as like a lot of other things that they hit. But they have slowed the format down even further by banning Tau. That's my opinion. I don't hate that he's gone, but if it was up to me, I probably wouldn't have banned him. A card I definitely would have banned is Son Goku Power of Legend. Like, I often joke about how they have to hit green every format as a green player, but like, this card was not in the same power level as any of these other things. Like, I get that they want to take a stance against like cards coming to play for free, and Power of Legend was relatively easy to play, but a 15k critical compared to a 15k double strike dual attacker is like not even in the same like category. Plus because green in general can't get nearly as aggressive, and the decks that do get aggressive would have a hard time triggering Power of Legend. If they really want to hit this card, I would have put it to 1. I don't like it on a ban list at all, but it's also not the end of the world. Like, I don't know. Just not the choice I would have made. That's it for the bans. Limited. New Ruler Limited is probably fine. I think New Ruler just does a little too much. Like a free play, basically no requirement. Like a Unison with 3 more markers is a pretty easy requirement to meet for most decks. And a 20k double striker that can't be blocked for 0 energy is a lot. So he kind of fits into the like explosive power threshold that like a 1-of card should be. But he also disappears at the end of the turn, and you can't really do anything with it. It does kind of hurt King Piccolo too, which is funny because King Piccolo decks would use this and then play their Time to Fight, I think is what it was called, the guy who evolves on top of the Piccolo. So they'd play this out, get the they'd get the damage for it, and then they'd evolve on top. So that guy's gone. That hurts a little bit. Janempa to 1. This guy, Bewitching Blow. I think this is just them trying to be proactive and that they don't want any kind of like really fast combo killy decks left. We'll talk about that more later. I think he's just being hit to go in line with like other things that are happening. Into their erratas. Dark Broly. All your Dark Broly's cost 1 to play from the drop. This murders this deck competitively. Like, on our big tier list video, I talked about how I didn't think Dark Broly was the best deck, and I think it's important to clarify that at the time I wasn't really considering Belmod in Dark Broly 2. I'd just never seen it done. I guess I've been living under a rock. I'd only ever seen it done with King Vegeta. You got to do the same dumb stuff where you would like loop all your Dark Brolys and what's he called? SS3 Thorn of the Dark Empire. You get to loop all of these cards and run your opponent down the same way that you did in King Vegeta. It was just a different version. Hitting Belmod stops that. I think this is a lot. I would have maybe like made it so you could only play like one Dark Brawler from the drop return or something if they really wanted to hit Dark Brawler further. But this, I mean, like, I think we'll talk about when I get to my tier list, but this deck is probably dead competitively. Like, people are going to continue to experiment with it because Dark Brawler feels like the deck that'll never die, but it's going to have to be really creative when people come up with for it to be competitive. Planetuffel's Errata. Baby's still a really, really, really good control deck, and it's still going to be kind of Great Wally, but once they play a battle card to the board, it makes the rest of the defense worse. So as a Baby player looking forward, you're going to have to build and plan around that, what that looks like with you not having any battle cards. And plan that around for your defense for your earlier turns. So I think Baby will have to adapt, and is certainly less good because of this requirement. But I think Baby's still going to be a really, really solid deck once people kind of mess with it a little bit. Vampa's change. This is strictly a proactive change so that Red Broly just doesn't come back with like a wrecking ball. But with King Piccolo to 1, Bardock banned, Tau banned, Red Broly is going to have a hard time really being as explosive as it used to be. And Vampa now having the extra requirement that it does, like, you can play Red Broly, I think it'll still be a good deck, but you're not killing people in turn 2. This is like a turn 3, turn 4-ish deck now. Like, it's just not going to happen. The good news with it not being able to kill in earlier turns means you can actually somewhat reliably go into the 6-drop and the SCR, because it used to be like almost not worth running. Like, a lot of people would like sideboard their SCR or run Lineage because you literally could not go into the I forget what he's called, but the 6-drop that warps 3 at random. You couldn't get there because you need your opponent to have 3 energy basically, and that would like they're gonna die before then in most situations. Young Invaders. I think Young Invaders was hit a little bit too much. I thought about this a lot since we saw this a couple days ago now. Sorry, just one day ago. Feels longer. King Vegeta was being really aggressively silly with a lot of the cards that were already banned. And even the more like mid-rangiest decks that were topping before, that were using like Jaren Unison and whatnot, still dabbled with these cards that were banned. So that already hurts that deck. Young Invaders costing energy on both sides hurts. Like, I think there's a really good argument to make it cost an energy to play something to your opponent's side of the board, because you are getting the burn out of it. So having to pay an energy there is totally fair. I don't know if it should have costed an energy for you to play one to your own side of the field, just to basically fulfill the requirements for playing your own cards. What this does mean is that using energy or other effects to clear your Young Invaders is going to be way more efficient, because your opponent's now sinking energy into those resources. They're no longer just free. I think King Vegeta is still playable in a deck. I just don't think it's going to be super competitive. But the core engine, like the archetype overall, has a lot of good like top end. The leader is actually still just like generically very good. So I don't know if I want to completely count it out, but I think it's fallen several pegs. Overall, I think we're gonna see mid-range become actually playable as like a strategy again, which is really good. Control decks aren't going to have to play this ultra greedy top end, super defensive style. Like, there's gonna be way more room for different decks to exist. Aggro decks are gonna have to get creative. Especially red aggro decks, because losing Tau, Bardock, and King Piccolo at the same time, along with Belmont, which was a tool they were using, which needed to go, but still, it was a tool they had at their disposal. Like, this is like a lot of hits to like aggressive strategy, so I think red aggro decks are going to have to get creative. Green doesn't have many aggro decks. The main one was Majin Vegeta, and he's already a turn 3 deck. Yellow doesn't really have a good aggro deck off the top of my head, and blue doesn't have an aggro deck, period, with Janempa at 1. Like, you might be able to experiment with blue Janempa, but that's not good. The main premier aggro decks that I think are going to stick around going forward are going to be black. If you want to play aggro in the format right now, you need to be on black. All of the Saiyan mill stuff is still live. So if you want to play like Vegex or Reboot Mass Saiyan or Power Thirst or SS4 Go, like any of these leaders are all still super viable. They're going to, other than the loss of Bardock, which does hurt them, they've come out of this relatively unscathed. Gogeta Xeno, which we'll talk about again later, also pretty much relatively completely unscathed. With that, I want to move over to this is my updated tier list, and we're going to go through this quickly. I haven't fully moved everything around, and again, some of this is definitely debatable, right? Super speculatory, but let's start off with best decks in color. Beforehand, I talked about Gogeta Xeno being the best deck in black, and I was mistaken then because I wasn't accounting for Dark Broly plus Belmod running people out of the game on my turn 2. With the game being as it is, I now think Gogeta Xeno is like the black deck to play because it has great card advantage tools, good board removal. It has tools to aggressively get underneath its opponent. Like, you can still run people down with it very consistently. If the game goes long, unlike a lot of aggro decks where if they kind of like fail to kill their opponent, they stutter out, Gogeta plays a long game really efficiently. He draws a lot of cards. He has good go wide capability. His regular threats are decent. Demigra Overrealm, Demon God Demigra 2 Power Unleashed, which is getting an anniversary box reprint, which is excellent. That card is insane here because not only does it warp away your drop to refill like your other tools, but it gives you a great kind of like mid-range tools against the slower decks to eat them alive over time. So I think he's going to be an absolute menace. King Cole, still the best green deck. With Baby being hit, I've swapped out my opinion for Baby and Soul Striker. I think Baby, if you look, Baby's still over here in the highly competitive options. People are going to mess with him. It might take a little while, but he's going to be a menace. Still, you will see him at top tables. But Striker is just such a generically powerful blue leader that you can play blue-yellow or mono-blue. Like, we're seeing a bunch of lists with this guy topping. Like, he's not going anywhere. He's an excellent generic blue leader. Red, and this is really speculatory, but I'm actually going to give red to Cooler. Because Cooler just feels very well positioned in the meta where we're currently at, where the game is going to be much slower, but he still has good tools against like any deck that might try to run him down fast. Being base red blue, the whole super combo to get out of one swing, play Cooler Tyrannical Assault to like clear another threat or two or something, like that play is still really good against period, but really good against aggro decks. Again, draws a ton of cards. The mill's a resource denial. He realistically threatens an alternate win condition on top of running his opponent down. If he had Self-Awakened baked in, he'd be like the perfect leader. And then yellow will be Sin Shenron. There's a couple other yellow leaders that might belong somewhere, like Helku is debatable. The blue-yellow shell leaders out of either Gotenks or Gohan and Icarus also, could go up here as best yellow leader. We're gonna give it to Sin. Other notable changes, just briefly. I've bumped up the red starter Vegeta. I think we're going to see a lot of people mess with it. Now that red's become a bit more open to be experimented with, we're going to see a lot of people messing with this and messing with launch. I've also bumped up Jiren a step. Jiren decks have kind of impressed me after like some more playing around playtesting. They're not as fragile, quite as fragile as I first thought. Otherwise, the one thing that's really changed is that we moved up both Gotenks and Tien. Gotenks and Tien were both kind of like green mid-rangey strategies. Mid-range just didn't have a good place in super competitive events. But I think in the current meta, they're going to come into their own more. Gotenks in particular, I almost put him up here. I think this is going to be dependent on people playing with it and experimenting with it and new cards. But Gotenks seems incredibly well positioned in the current meta where things are going to be probably slowing down a lot. Like, he draws a ton of cards, he has great removal, good boss monsters, awakens at a really high life total, has a great unison options, I mean, it's a straightforward deck, we all know it, it's been around for a while, but Gotenks is going to continue to be a great option for like mid-range and probably the goal center for mid-range as a archetype across all colors. Other than maybe Soul Striker, but Soul Striker mid-range is almost control. But off topic. I've put King Vegeta way down here in the great at locals, but not best for bigger events category. I think he still has some legs, but if someone might come up with something that's really good for King Vegeta, and if they do, I could see him kind of going up a step. But for now, we're going to prospectively put him here. And then Dark Broly, I'm putting in Rogue. I almost want to put Dark Broly in like unplayable, and the only reason I'm not is because it seems like no matter what they do to black and this leader, he like refuses to die. So someone might come up with something that brings this guy back. So we're going to put him in the rogue tier because he's going to need a lot of experimentation. But this stuff, and even a lot of some of these like other things up here, you're going to see these at like big regional events. We're still going to have a really diverse, wide open meta, and probably a little bit wider now that mid-range is more viable. I think, like closing thoughts, I think the ban list overall was needed. Like the 2.0 ban list, I mean, was needed. I don't know if the Janempa and Power of Legends were necessarily hits were needed personally, and a couple things might have been a little over the top, but the game's going to be in a great state. The only other closing thought I have is that Bandai does not need to hit anything else, at least for now. Like, if someone else comes up with some other tier 0, basically unbeatable shenanigans or whatever, like, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. I don't think that bridge even exists, though. I think right now a lot of the best decks are in completely beatable categories, and they're going to be super well positioned. It's a good time to be playing Dragon Ball Super, and currently after all of the changes. We'll see what Bandai looks at adjusting going forward, but honestly, I don't know if they got it perfect, but I think they did a really good job. So kudos to them for that. Anyways, guys, that closes my thoughts for now. I'm going to be working on editing some other videos. We'll have a couple of matches up soon. I'm in the Rising Phoenix Odyssey content creator match, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Until next time, thanks for entering the chamber.